This show is part of One Place, a daily network of focused briefings across the stories people follow most.
Welcome to the Roundup. I'm here with the latest on a high-stakes week in Washington and beyond, covering everything from international brinkmanship to major leadership changes at home. Let's get into it.
Trump issues a 48-hour ultimatum to Iran over shipping.
The Senate confirms Markwayne Mullin as Homeland Security Chief.
Mullin takes over DHS amid a partial government shutdown.
ICE agents deploy to airports as TSA staffing collapses.
2 pilots die in a tragic runway collision at LaGuardia.
The Iran conflict forces a delay in Trump's China trip.
The administration pays $1 billion to cancel wind leases.
Voice of America staff sue Kari Lake over propaganda claims.
TSA funding remains stalled despite the new secretary's confirmation.
Minnesota sees a thaw in its massive Medicaid funding dispute.
Starting with Iran. President Trump's approach to Iran has been a whirlwind of shifting signals lately. Over the weekend, he issued a stark 48-hour ultimatum demanding that Iran reopen the Strait of Hormuz or face devastating American airstrikes. This came just a day after he suggested the conflict was winding down. By Monday, the tone shifted again. While visiting Graceland in Memphis, Trump spoke of constructive talks and major points of agreement. He even granted a 5-day stay on the threatened attacks, citing contact with an unnamed Iranian leader, though Iran hasn't confirmed this dialogue yet.
It is a surreal mix of high-stakes diplomacy and personal diversions. While the president was golfing at Mar-a-Lago and touring Elvis Presley's home, global markets were reacting to the threat of a total energy infrastructure shutdown. The stakes couldn't be higher, as Iran warned it would retaliate by targeting regional water and energy supplies if the U.S. followed through on its threats. For now, the 5-day window offers a brief reprieve, but with ongoing drone and missile exchanges between U.S. and Iranian forces, the situation remains incredibly volatile and unpredictable for everyone involved.
Moving to the Senate. The U.S. Senate has officially confirmed Senator Markwayne Mullin as the new head of the Department of Homeland Security with a 54-45 vote. Mullin, a former mixed martial arts fighter, is known for his fiery personality and staunch support of President Trump. He steps into a role that oversees critical areas like immigration enforcement, border protection, and airport security. His confirmation was remarkably fast, following the removal of former Secretary Kristi Noem. Mullin has already pledged to support the administration's mission to secure the border and restore law and order across the entire country.
The vote wasn't without its friction, though. Senator Rand Paul was the lone Republican to vote against Mullin, raising concerns about Mullin's past comments regarding political violence. During the hearings, Democrats also pressed him on his rhetoric, but Mullin largely ignored those critiques, focusing instead on his commitment to protecting the homeland. He takes over a department that is currently embattled by a partial government shutdown, which has left many services underfunded. Mullin's background as a 10-year veteran of the House of Representatives gives him some legislative experience, but leading such a massive agency will be a different challenge.
Next, Mullin's new role. As Markwayne Mullin prepares to lead DHS, he faces an immediate crisis with over 100,000 employees currently working without pay due to the ongoing government shutdown. During his confirmation, Mullin expressed a desire to move the department out of the daily headlines by focusing on quiet, effective protection. He emphasized that he isn't scared of a challenge, but is deeply afraid of failure. This transition comes at a time when DHS is the tip of the spear for the administration's mass deportation plans and aggressive immigration surges in major cities like Los Angeles and Chicago, which have recently seen controversial incidents.
The department has seen a significant expansion in its enforcement efforts over the last year, fueled by billions in partisan funding. While border encounters have hit record lows, the human cost has been high, with recent reports of U.S. citizens being killed during federal immigration surges. Mullin's predecessor, Kristi Noem, faced heavy criticism for her handling of these events and for a controversial ad campaign. Mullin has promised a better approach to immigration enforcement, but he will have to balance these aggressive policies with the reality of a demoralized, unpaid workforce and intense scrutiny from both sides of the political aisle.
Now to the airports. The impact of the government shutdown is becoming painfully visible at major U.S. airports. Thousands of TSA agents are calling out of work because they haven't been paid in weeks, leading to massive security queues. In response, The White House has deployed hundreds of ICE agents to 14 major hubs, including JFK and Hartsfield-Jackson. Interestingly, President Trump specifically requested that these ICE agents not wear masks while working at the airports, stating it wasn't an appropriate look for the setting. This move is intended to fill the staffing void, but the operational disruptions are still causing travelers to wait for hours.
The numbers are staggering, with some airports seeing over 40% of their TSA staff absent on a single day. Travelers are being told to arrive up to 4 hours early, and some are even sleeping in terminals to ensure they don't miss their flights. Over 100 airport leaders have signed a letter to Congress expressing deep concern over these long-lasting operational disruptions. While ICE agents are providing some relief, their ability to perform specialized TSA tasks is limited. The situation highlights the growing strain on the nation's infrastructure as the funding lapse continues with no clear end in sight.
Regarding the LaGuardia crash, a horrific accident at LaGuardia Airport has left the aviation community in shock. An Air Canada flight collided with a fire truck on the runway late Sunday night, resulting in the deaths of both pilots. Witnesses described the scene as if the plane had been cut in half. Dozens of passengers were injured, with 41 people taken to local hospitals. The fire truck had been responding to a different aircraft reporting an odor issue when the collision occurred. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy visited the site, noting that seatbelts likely saved many lives among the passengers who were jolted from their seats during the impact.
The investigation is now focused on air traffic control recordings, where a staff member was heard shouting for the truck to stop just seconds before the crash. One of the deceased pilots has been identified as Antoine Forrest, a young man at the start of his career. Passengers described a terrifying scene of sliding down the plane's wing to escape after a loud boom and heavy braking. LaGuardia was shut down for nearly an entire day following the incident. This tragedy serves as a grim reminder of the complexities of runway safety, especially during busy periods when multiple emergency responses are active simultaneously.
Shifting to China relations. The escalating conflict with Iran has forced President Trump to postpone a highly anticipated state visit to China. Trade was supposed to be the primary focus of the trip, but the president stated it is more important for him to remain in Washington while American forces are in harm's way. This delay adds a layer of awkwardness to the U.S.-China relationship, especially as Trump has publicly called for China to help reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Experts suggest that China has little motivation to get involved in the Middle East conflict, as their capabilities there are limited and their interests don't align with U.S. demands.
While China is a major importer of oil and isn't happy about rising prices, they aren't necessarily eager to bail out the U.S. administration. Analysts believe the war won't be the central theme when Trump and President Xi eventually meet, but the postponement disrupts the momentum of trade negotiations. There is also the visual aspect to consider. A grand reception in Beijing while a war is active would be a difficult look for the administration. For now, the trip is on hold for at least 5 or 6 weeks, leaving the future of the U.S.-China trade agenda in a state of temporary limbo.
Next, energy policy shifts. In a major reversal of energy policy, the Trump administration has agreed to pay $1 billion to the French company Total Energies to walk away from offshore wind leases. These projects were located off the coasts of New York and North Carolina. Instead of developing renewable energy, the company will now invest that money into fossil fuel projects, including a liquefied natural gas plant in Texas. This move is part of the administration's broader campaign against offshore wind, which the president claims is necessary to lower energy costs and increase reliability. Environmental groups have criticized the deal as a way to bypass court orders.
Interior Secretary Doug Burgum praised the move, stating that fossil fuels provide the secure baseload power the country needs for the future. Total Energy's CEO noted that the development of offshore wind was no longer in the country's interest under the current administration. This is a sharp departure from the previous administration's focus on wind as a climate solution. While the global offshore wind market continues to grow, particularly in China, the U.S. is pivoting back toward oil and gas. The billion-dollar payout effectively ends these specific wind projects, ensuring that the capital is redirected toward traditional energy sources as the president promised.
Turning to Voice of America. A group of veteran journalists at Voice of America is suing Kari Lake, an official in the Trump administration, alleging she is using the network to broadcast pro-Trump propaganda. The lawsuit claims that Lake has trampled on the network's editorial independence, which is protected by federal law and the First Amendment. Attorneys for the journalists argue that during times of international crisis, like the current conflict with Iran, it is vital for government-funded outlets to provide truthful, unbiased news. This is the latest in a series of legal battles over the direction of the agency, which was originally founded to provide factual accounts during World War II.
The U.S. Agency for Global Media defended its oversight, stating that taxpayer-funded broadcasting must reflect U.S. policy and the interests of the American people. However, critics argue this interpretation violates the VOA Charter, which requires accurate and authoritative journalism. President Trump has previously called VOA coverage anti-American and sought to reduce the network's size. The lawsuit also names Michael Regas the acting CEO, following court rulings that found previous actions by Lake to be unlawful. As the Senate considers a permanent nominee for the role, the internal conflict over the network's mission and its role as a tool of soft power continues to intensify.
Back to Capitol Hill. Despite the confirmation of Markwayne Mullin, the Department of Homeland Security remains without funding for over 38 days. Lawmakers are struggling to reach a deal as Democrats push for reforms in how ICE conducts immigration enforcement. Specifically, they are asking for judicial warrants for agents and the right for officers to wear masks. However, the gap between the White House and Congress has only widened. President Trump is now insisting that any funding deal must also include the SAVE Act, which relates to voter registration requirements. This new demand has stalled negotiations just as Congress prepares for a scheduled recess later this week.
If a fix isn't found soon, this could become the longest federal funding lapse in U.S. history. The pain is being felt most acutely at airports, where travelers are facing hours-long security lines. While the administration has sent ICE officers to help, their impact is limited because they aren't trained for TSA duties. The political stalemate is creating a significant operational crisis, and the rhetoric on both sides suggests that a compromise is still far off. Without a breakthrough, the department's 250,000 employees will continue to face uncertainty, and the traveling public will continue to deal with the fallout of the budget battle.
Finally, Minnesota's Medicaid update. There is a significant development in the standoff between the Trump administration and the state of Minnesota over Medicaid funding. Previously, federal officials threatened to cut off over $2 billion, claiming the state hadn't done enough to root out fraud in several programs. However, a new letter from the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services indicates that Minnesota's revised corrective action plan has been approved. The state has hit key milestones in implementing this plan, which involves revalidating thousands of providers. This move suggests a major thaw in the relationship, potentially saving billions of dollars that are critical for services like autism care and medical transportation.
While the federal government hasn't explicitly said they are dropping all claims, they have urged the state to stay its administrative appeal, as the issue may soon be moot. Another $243 million remains tied up in federal court, but CMS Director Mehmet Oz has indicated that if the state continues with its corrective plan, that money should also be released. Minnesota has shifted over 160 workers from other departments to focus on this fraud prevention effort. It's a rare moment of administrative progress amidst a week of heavy political conflict, offering some hope that the state's healthcare system will avoid a catastrophic loss of federal support.
That's our roundup for today. For more daily briefings on the stories that matter most, be sure to follow the show. We'll see you back here